Hey Fire fans, this is Nick once again on the Feed the Fire podcast, and in this episode we're reviewing the Fire's match against the Columbus Crew. We're previewing their upcoming match against the Montreal Impact. Did I say Impact? CF Montreal. Whew, it's been a long week and it's only Monday. But I promise, this episode won't be too long. Not going to have another hour one. And at the end of the show, though, I will also give you a few things about the new little recording space here, as you can see. So make sure you check it all out and stay tuned. Hey soccer fans, welcome back once again to the Feed the Fire podcast. I am your host Nick, and I promised you in the teaser we weren't going to drag this episode out and go for another hour, so let me quick take care of our housekeeping measures and we'll get right into that Columbus Crew recap. First of all, big thank you to Alex Campbell and everyone over at CHGO Fire, producer Lawrence, for having me co-host their latest episode. Please make sure you go find CHGO Sports on the All City Network and be on the lookout for all of Alex Campbell's great Chicago Fire content, great guest hosts, interviews, everything. Also a big thank you to the Wise Men Say podcast, to Gerald Lucas and Ty Fisher, who recorded a special episode with me previewing the Crew's match against the Chicago Fire. Those are two Crew diehards who know everything about the black and gold, so make sure that you're following them for all your Columbus Crew updates. Also, shout out to all the Chicago Fire fans who traveled to the Crew. I was impressed with the caravan and seeing pictures and stories and, empty gas gauges and mileage counters going up throughout social media. So congratulations. Also, a special shout out to our friend of the show, Israel, for sending a picture of him and his son. Pop that up on the screen here for those of you watching. And unfortunately, it was a 2-1 loss, but hopefully you guys enjoyed the game. Anytime you're on a road trip with your son, it's got to be a good time. Finally, there's a new show that we are putting on. Some of you may be familiar with Goals.tv, GOLZ.tv, a soccer streaming platform that is kind of amalgamating a whole bunch of different sort of podcasts, fan-created content. Most of it is, American-based MLS, but they also have a partnership with USL, so you're going to see a lot of new USL content, and there's a lot of international content as well that's coming your way. So go find Goals.tv, bookmark it. I'm going to be doing like a scoreboard watch show where every week we look at the biggest results, the most shocking results, and where the teams are in the standings. So check that out. Again, bookmark it. That'll be up within the next day or two. Big thanks to Jose Tellez and his team for extending me the opportunity and for putting this channel together. And of course, thank you to all of you, because without you, the viewers, the listeners, the subscribers, everyone who's rated and reviewed the show, none of these opportunities would happen. But you're out there, you like what we're doing, you're interacting with me, the algorithms are liking everything about the show, and so we get these opportunities. So just to mention one, follow along. Foot is life. F-U-T is life. Thank you on Twitter for connecting, talking to me, and for the support and the good words on the show. And with all of that, let's get into the summary, the meat and potatoes here, if you will. The Chicago Fire traveled to the Columbus Crew over the weekend, falling 2-1 in spectacular fashion, as people have said, snatching defeat from the jaws of draw. In the 68th minute, Jason Russell-Rowe got the scoring started, and I had mentioned him in a prior show to be on the lookout for him. He had a couple of near misses in the Crew's first two couple of games. Young player really getting the opportunity and trying to make the most of it with the Crew, and he finally gets his goal, his first one of the season, and it was a beautiful shot. Really not much of a chance for Brady. Winds up from about 20-some yards out and just is able to put it in the perfect location. Hardly a chance for Brady. A little bit of a defensive breakdown there. But the Fire do draw level in the 72nd minute, thanks to who else? Fabian Herbers! Fabian Herbers continues his scoring for the Chicago Fire and continues his great play. Now, we've said it on this show, and other people have agreed with me in other contexts, that if the Fire are going to be competing for trophies, Fabian Herbers should be a depth piece, should be a rotational guy off the bench. He shouldn't be your starting winger or starting wingback, and he definitely shouldn't be your leading scorer. So maybe that's an indictment of the rest of the offense, that it's Herbers is the one that's doing it for him. but they'll take the goals as any way they can come at this point. So Herbers levels in the 72nd minute, but then heartbreak in stoppage time. In like really, really long stoppage time. There were 12 minutes of added stoppage time, and we're going to get into that number a little bit later in the show, but it's in the 90th plus 10 that Mo Farsi gets the game winner. It was a quick throw-in by the Columbus Crew. Now, some people are saying it's an illegal throw. The referee didn't award it one way or other. I'm not sure I buy that argument, because if the ball went off of a Chicago Fire player, or if the ball goes off of an opposing player, just generally speaking here, does everyone just stand around and wait for the referee to signal which way the throw goes? No, everybody knows whose possession it is, whose ball it is, and they take the throw-in. No one's waiting for the AR, the sideline official, to hold the flag up. No one's waiting for the center official, the head ref, to say, okay, you can go ahead and take your throw-in now. So for people who were saying that it was an illegal throw because the referee didn't actually signal it, unless there was some sort of discrepancy as to whose ball it was, and at that point, if there was, the Chicago Fire players needed to prevent the throw-in from being taken or do anything to stall it. But the reality of it was, it seemed to be pretty obvious that it was the Crew ball, and the Fire defenders even backed away. Nobody tried to pick the ball up. The Crew took a quick throw and caught the entire Fire backline asleep. Gasper had to shift over to pick up whoever brought the ball in, leaving Mo Farsi wide open on the far post, and credit the Crew for finding it, and credit Farsi for the nice little poised tap-in on the back post there. And so that's the win. Honestly, I didn't expect the Fire to come in and beat the Crew. I would have been happy with the draw, but for them to lose like this, to collapse again late in the game, to not finish it out, that is a problem. That is what makes this an even more depressing result. Now, as we get into some of my notes and the things that I noticed in this game, I've got to start off with the lineup here. Remember last week when the Fire had no offense at home? Well, Klopas started the same offensive players. Though on paper, yeah, it was technically a different formation, but the same attacking players were started in this game as they were against Cincinnati. No change except maybe formationally, but you heard Klopas. He said a formation is just that. It's a formation. It's how you start. It's flexible. You got to move things around during the game. We don't hold anyone to a formation, right? You see Shaqiri float to the wing and float back inside. Same thing with Herbers and Gutierrez, and Kuipers is floating all around, and he even had to start dropping a lot deeper to try and get some touches on the ball and try and get involved in the game. Gosh, there was even one point when the Fire were defending a corner kick, Kuipers was in the box defending it. And yeah, maybe that's how they decided to address the lack of set-piece defending in that Cincinnati game. But if that is the case, I'm not a fan of it. Yeah, Kuipers is a tall guy and could probably play some decent defense on those set pieces, but how are you supposed to spring a counterattack when your striker is defending in your own 18? Those are just a few of the things I noticed when it came to the lineup and what the Fire tried to do, or at least tried to set up. The difference in the lineup, though, was more on the defensive side. You saw Salquist and Gasper get the starts over Pineda and Jimenez, who had been starting in that Cincinnati game. Happy to see Salquist in there. Played solid. I think he had a good game. Chase Gasper played well, held himself. I'm still not sure if Pineda would have been a better option in certain instances, or at least to start in the midfield along with Costa. Can't wait to see if Frank ever rolls that duo out as the D-mids, Acosta and Pineda, but we will see how they approach things against Montreal in the next game. As far as my first half notes, and this kind of piggybacks on the lineup issues here, the Fire had really no discernible game plan, and it was highlighted by the fact that they started out with the majority of possession and didn't do anything with it. The Fire had the majority of possession, I'd say those first 10 minutes at least, if not about 15 or so, and they seemed to be controlling the tempo of the game. Usually, I would expect the home team, and especially the Crew, who is such a dangerous attacking team, to really push it against the Chicago Fire and try and jump out to that early lead. But they seemed content to just kind of grow into the game and let the Fire have a little possession to begin with. So that was great, but again, the Fire didn't do anything with it. And I'm checking my notes here to see if I copied any of their expected goal shooting thing here. No, I didn't. But there was not a lot of offensive creation in the beginning of that game. Also, I often saw two midfielders occupying the same space. And this definitely has to do with Shaqiri and Gutierrez not being coached on where to play during what parts of the game states, etc. Maybe this is Klopas is like, yeah, formation is just that. It's just a starting lineup and we can flow around. But they're not getting into different spaces. They're not getting into passing lanes. They're not making the right runs. And like I said, a lot of the time you'll see two midfielders occupying the same space. There is even one point where it might have been Herbers or Acosta or Gutierrez, I forget exactly, was driving the ball forward from the defensive third into the middle third of the pitch, advancing the ball over the center line, and Shaqiri is making the exact same run as the ball carrier. He is not trying to get out to the wing and pull defenders away. He is not trying to stretch the field and run away. He is not trying to like drop back and be a check down option, so to say. He's literally running about 5 yards in front of the ball carrier, just with the ball carrier up the pitch. That is allowing the defense to have one player guard two Chicago Fire attacking players. And eventually, that ball did get played to Shaqiri, at which point he dribbles it outside and loses possession of it. And that happened a couple times to him. Actually, go over and check out Firewatch FC. It's a new YouTube channel. They're also on Instagram. Great guy, Alexis, big fan of the team. He really hammers Shaqiri in this game about how his dribbling statistics, his take-on statistics, his defensive statistics were pretty much just the worst on the team. And one of the worst in the season, especially for a guy of his supposed caliber. We keep saying how great of a player he is, but he's definitely not shown it while wearing a Chicago Fire jersey. So that was a big problem for me. The midfield was clogged because of the Chicago Fire's inability to get out of their own way. And also, speaking of Shaqiri, he's again just lobbing balls up to Kuipers, turning a possession into a 50-50 matter. Talked about Kuipers and how he had to drop back quite a bit, especially on that one corner. And speaking of corners, my goodness, same problem as last year, whether it's Acosta, Shaqiri, Gutierrez, whoever's taking the corner kicks. Can we get the ball past the near post defender, past the first defender? Why are you trying to do that and flick it on? If that's the case, if that's what you're trying to do, if teams draw it up like that, where you want to play the ball to the first attacking player to that near post to get a flick on so your guys on the back post can get it, well then the guys aren't making the runs. There's no one there at the far post to flick it on, and they're getting beat. If you're the one making a run, it's like a slant route in the NFL. You're the receiver. You know you're making the run. You know where you're going to go. You're going to get in front of that cornerback. You have to be the first one to the ball. Why the Chicago Fire aren't doing that, especially with the new set-piece coach, is just maddening. Get the ball over the first line of defense there, past the first man. Quit trying these low-driving, whipping crosses. You got Chihos, you got Pineda, you got Kuipers, now you got Salquist. You got four of the tallest guys on the pitch at any given time. Just lob the ball up and let him go up and get it. We've seen Kuipers score with his head. We've seen Chihos score with his head before. And heck, I bet Salquist and Pineda could do it too. So why don't we try that a little differently? It's just maddening to see them whipping balls into the near post every time. The first half, needless to say, was ugly. It was not good soccer. It was not entertaining. And you know what? It kind of benefited the Chicago Fire to a certain extent because the crew couldn't play the way they wanted to. Now, the second half was a lot more of the same as the first half. We're going to jump right to stoppage time here. We're going to talk about that 12 minutes of stoppage time that fans on both sides of the ball, crew and Fire fans alike, were just harping on social media like, this is insane. We're going to lose this game because of all the stoppage time. I always found it funny that none of the reactions I saw on social media were, yes, 12 more minutes, we're going to win it. It was always, oh my gosh, why is there 12 minutes? We're going to lose this game. Let's take this point and get out of here. Found that to be a little indicative, especially of the state of a lot of crew fans at that point. But yes, 12 minutes is a lot of stoppage time. Objectively and subjectively. It is a lot of stoppage time, and it felt like a long time. But in this case, not unreasonable. Here's why. First of all, in his post-game comments, Frank Klopas even said, yeah, 10 minutes is what he timed it as. So you're already, if you believe Frank Klopas, at the 10-minute mark. And here are a few other things that contributed to it. In the second half, there were 10 substitutions, 2 yellow cards, a goal, a VAR review of the goal, and whatever other stoppage time was added up for players going down, the ball being out of play, referees having to explain things, whatever the case may be. So with all of that, 12 minutes didn't seem exactly unreasonable or unfair or insanely long. But yeah, it is a long time just in general. I'll give you that one. The other idea I want to push back on is the idea of Chicago Fire fans saying to everyone, well, these results are fine. You know, we played the three hardest teams, or the three of the hardest teams in the Eastern Conference, and we were competitive in each game. This is fine. Things will get better as we get an easier schedule. First of all, 1 point over 3 matches doesn't help your playoff push regardless of your opponent. And second of all, you're going to bank on the fact that, well, when we play easier teams, then we'll figure it out. Like, if you haven't figured out how to play offense or how to string some passes together or have a decent expected goal, again, not that I'm married to the idea of advanced statistics and expected goals, but it is a data point for offensive efficiency here, right? You're not going to figure it out against easier teams. You can't figure it out in general. The Chicago Fire are 12th in the Eastern Conference in expected goals at 4.5 and 15th overall in the league. That's per FBref.com. Again, offensive creativity and competency doesn't just come with easier opponents, because if it did, Fire would have been making the playoffs the last couple of years. Also, to me, this is the biggest reason why I disagree with people who say, nah, it's okay, we're playing the hardest teams, right? Chris Brady. Chris Brady is blowing this curve for everybody, and here's why. Chicago Fire opponents have taken 44 shots against Chris Brady, and that's total shots. That's not just shots on goal, that's total shots. The Fire, conversely, have only taken 24 shots, so they're shooting half as much as their opponents about. Chris Brady has made 15 saves and allowed 6 goals. If you believe it's just Brady allowing the goals, fine. It's definitely mostly the defense, not on Brady here. Opponents, meanwhile, have only had to make 3 saves and have had 4 goals allowed, or the Fire have only scored 4 goals in 3 games this season. So basically, Chris Brady is playing so well that the scoreline doesn't show just how much of a disparity there is between the Chicago Fire and the top of the Eastern Conference. Now, speaking of the statistics of the game, let's do our statistical recap and see if it matches up with the eye test. So, at the end of this game, the Chicago Fire had 38% possession. That seemed to be about right. Other than that first 10-15 minutes and maybe some stretches in the second half, this was all Crew. The Fire had 13 shots to Columbus's 18, but only putting 2 on goal. Meanwhile, the Crew put 11 shots on goal. Now, the Fire did block 4 shots, so we'll give a little credit to the defense there. However, the Fire only had 378 passes to the Crew's 554, and the Fire's passing accuracy was about 83%. Again, to me, if you're passing in the 80%, if you're completing passes in the 80%, you're playing a lot of passes in your defensive zone. And let's see what other numbers support that. The fact that they only had 5 corners, 9 total crosses, 1 offside. They only won 6 aerial duels. So to me, these are all things that are indicative of a lacking offense. Their XG was interesting because according to MLSsoccer.com, it was 2.5, though FBref.com, which uses Opta, has 1.9 for their XG. Chris Brady in this match, 9 saves. So 2/3 of all of his saves came in this match. 9 of his 15 saves on the season have come in this match. Defense had 18 clearances, 10 fouls, 2 yellow cards against the Fire, and no red cards. Thankfully, no red cards yet, but I'm sure we're getting there, guys. Again, turning back to the XG, the Fire had 2.5 to the Crew's 1.9. Crazy thing is, this was the Fire's best match from a pure expected goals perspective. But if you're looking at FBref.com numbers, which breaks it down a little bit more, they only gave the Fire a 1.9 expected goal, and only 5 shots that the Fire took had a greater than 10% chance of going in. That includes Fabian Herber's goal. So the bulk of their opportunities came in 5 shots. They only had 5 scoring chances that were, I think the lowest was at 17%, and Herber's shot was about 69%. So The Fire had a few more creative opportunities. This may have been their best game from an expected goal standpoint, but from an offensive standpoint, not really. It was still a couple of long balls to Kuipers, and Herber's getting on the end of a good counterattack. So, again, same old problems rear their head. The defense, and especially Chris Brady, kind of cover things up, and the Fire kind of survive terrible scrutiny for another week. But they're not going to be able to do that against Montreal. Now, Montreal, are they a terrible team? They're certainly not playing like it, but I don't think the Fire can survive another ho-hum performance before real serious questions are starting to be asked of this coaching staff and the players. But before we get into the Montreal preview, we're going to take a quick sponsor break and remind everyone that Feed the Fire is brought to you by Skira Icelandic Spring Water. Skira is Icelandic for clear, and the water comes from a spring in a government-protected nature preserve in Iceland with naturally low mineral content. This isn't your average water, clearly, pun intended. It's one of the best, and you can go out and get a bottle or two or three or however many you want at your local 7-Eleven store. Definitely perfect to stay hydrated when you're getting ready to go out for this St. Patrick's Day weekend and catch the Montreal match. So make sure you pick up some Skira at your local 7-Eleven. And also at this time, it is time for our featured guest, John Donovan, giving you his takes on all things Fire and MLS. Take it away, John.
Nick, John Donovan here, talking about the MLS and the Chicago Fire. Nick, I looked at the positioning of the league today, and the Fire are in their traditional spot, second to last. Really sad. They've got the talent. They just don't have the management on the field, Nick. It's such a shame. So the game started out against Columbus with the Fire really taking the ball to them. I mean, for about 30 minutes, it was the Fire. They couldn't get many shots off, but they had it in their end of the field, in their offensive end. The 38th minute, things changed real quick. We had the Columbus Crew started bringing the ball down, and Brady was really taxed. He made some beautiful saves, especially one by Cucho. I thought that was probably the save of the game. He fingertipped it over the top of the goal. One bad thing about the Fire right now is, there's always a Klopas. And when I say Klopas, I mean an era. And the era that he's making is he's playing Shaqiri. This had to be the worst game that Shaqiri's ever played. He was overrun. The ball was just taken away from him twice. His passing was way off. I mean, he lasted 60-some minutes into that game, and he should have been gone. He is becoming a weight on this system. As far as Kuiper's going, he seems to finally starting to get some shots off. He had two that just cleared. One hit the post, and the other one just cleared. But he seems like he's starting to work up there. I think the team at about the 70th minute, Klopas put Mueller in. And I think Mueller on that left side is really going to be necessary if this team's going to win any games. I mean, you can't have Gutierrez over there. He's not a left wing. He's a center midfielder. And he runs with the ball, so he drags the defense towards him. You've got to get Shaqiri out. Use Selassie, use Kuipers, use Gutierrez in that spot. But you just can't have Shaqiri clogging up the game like he's doing. Herber's is Herber's. The first goal and the only goal for the Fire was they had been losing. They were on the defense, and they had sort of a quick break. Ball came in, fell off a couple of legs, fell to Herber's, and scored. So it was a 1-1 game way deep into the game. And what happened there about, it had to be the 92nd minute, I believe. No, I'm sorry, it was the 101 minute, is the new defenseman, Selquist, got flat-footed. I mean, they was a throw-in. I don't know where his mind was. He obviously wasn't with, I think it was Rossi that broke. He lost him. He was about 6 yards behind him, and it was quick. It was Rossi to whoever else, and then right to Farsi and a goal. There was no way that Brady was going to save that. And that was right smack again on the head of Klopas. What was he playing a guy out there that wasn't ready to play? He had Pineda. He knows the league. Pineda. He knows the league. He knows what could happen so quickly. But no, we had to play this new guy out there that really got flat-footed and lost the game for the team. Not too cool. Not too cool at all. I like to kind of name the players that I believe really did poorly and the players that I believe really did well, especially for the Fire. Now, the worst players on the team, obviously Solquist, he gave up the final goal. I mean, it doesn't matter whether you lose 10-1 or 2-1, you lose. And right at a critical time of the game, he wandered. Bad move. And Shaqiri could not get a pass off. Midfielders were just running up to him and taking the ball away from him. It was the worst exhibition of an $8.2 million player I have ever seen. The best thing that they could do would be to ship him over Lugano or pay him off and let him go, because he is going to hold this team back, period. Good. I like the way Acosta plays. I really do. He's an aggressive, tireless runner. I think he was taken off about the 80th minute, but played real well. I like Kuipers. I think that he's starting to get the feel of the goal. Maybe the feel of the defense. This defense might be a little bit tougher than he's used to over in Belgium. And I thought Aragoni played fairly well also. I really liked his game. He seemed to really stand up. And Kuipers on the other side. Not Kuipers, Gasper. He played quite well too. So, Klopas opening up that 3-back with Chizos as the left wing was a disaster, obviously. Whenever I see an outstanding young player, I like to talk about it a little bit. Sullivan from Philadelphia, I believe, in my mind, is the kind of the young Landon Donovan. But I saw another guy in the Columbus game that really is a tough player and will let it ride, is this Russell Rowe from Canada. Really a good, too young, 19 and 20, I believe, but young and really, really aggressively good. Fun to watch. The one that Russell Rowe scored was just buried. There was no way Brady was going to get to that ball. I mean, and he shot it from maybe the top of the key, top of the box. So good game, exciting game. The Fire just keep making stupid mistakes at the end of these games. That flat-footedness of Solquist just was unbelievable. It just was unacceptable in every fashion for a soccer player to do that. So, hello, Mike. Thanks a lot, Nick. A lot of fun. Take care.
All right, Fire fans, we are back for the second half of our show. Big thanks to John Donovan and his always exciting and colorful commentary on the Chicago Fire and MLS. John, thank you, as always, for continuing to contribute and support the show. Now, the Fire, gotta have short memories, guys, right? Can't go into this Montreal match thinking, oh no, if we lose this one, we're really behind the 8-ball. Oh no, this is a must-win game for us. They have to approach this game, yes, much more seriously, with much more passion, with much more motivation. Get out, get an early lead. There's no doubt about that. But they are coming up against a Montreal team who is coming off their biggest win in recent history after defeating an Inter Miami squad, albeit without Messi, 3-2. So let's take a look at CF Montreal, not the aforementioned Impact that I mentioned in the teaser here. So Montreal is currently second in the Eastern Conference with two wins and a draw. They have victories at Dallas and at Miami, and their draw is at Orlando. So good teams here that they're going toe-to-toe with. What's interesting to note is Montreal's current schedule has them starting the season with, I want to say 6, maybe 8 away games to begin, and hopefully that travel starts to take its toll in week 4 here against the Chicago Fire. They've had some long trips going from Montreal down to Dallas and Miami and Orlando and now to Chicago. So hopefully the Fire can take advantage of maybe some jet-lagged Montreal players. But what's a positive for Montreal is they've had 5 goals scored on the season, and they have 5 different players who have scored them. So they're not relying on a single player to do it all for them. Looking at how they've lined up, here's their latest lineup against Inter Miami. They have Soro in goal, and then going from left to right along the back, Alvarez, Waterman, and Corbo, so a 3-man back line there. Midfielders of Lassiter, Chanieri, Piet, and Rouen. Attacking midfielder and Bryce Duke. And then on their striking front, Cochero and Vilsaint. Eventually I'll figure that out. So who to look out for in the starting lineup? Now, Lassiter has been around the league. I really wish he could have played a little bit more to his potential. I really liked him when he was back in Houston. He showed flashes of it when he was with Miami, but then Miami had to make a lot of roster moves over the last couple of years. So you saw Lassiter and Duke move to Montreal. And they have been integral into this offense. Bryce Duke playing well, maybe off to the best start in his young MLS career. So keep an eye on Duke and Lassiter linking up on the left-hand side. But you've got Piet and Chouanier, who are excellent defensive midfielders. Piet has been described as that bulldog in the midfield, a guy that it's really, really hard to dribble around him. Like, he will eat you up in the midfield. He is not afraid also to make a hard foul and take a yellow card. So similar to how the Fire have wanted to play, lock it down in the middle of the field and attack up the wings, that's what we kind of are going to see here with Montreal, but they do play with those two strikers up front. And, you know, if Vilsaint or Cochero aren't doing it, who can they pull off the bench? Former Golden Boot winner, former MVP, Joseph Martinez. Now, he's definitely not in the same kind of form as he was when he was winning trophies with the Red and Black in Atlanta, but the man can still find the back of the net, and he did so, I believe, in that game against Miami. They also can bring in Wanyama off the bench to shore up the defense. They've got Ibrahim coming off the bench as well, who scored in their last game. So Montreal is a very well-rounded team. Now, are they that good of a team where they're going to clearly beat the Chicago Fire and, you know, end up in the top 5 or 6 of the Eastern Conference at the end of the season? I don't think so. I need to see them put a whole season of this together before we start saying, hey, Montreal is back, kind of a thing. But they do have the pieces there, right? They're very similar to the Chicago Fire in that regard, where they've got the pieces. How are they going to put it together? And so far through 3 games, they've done pretty well with it. But I do think the Fire can exploit some weaknesses here. So their goalkeeper, Seurat, 22 years old, young keeper, only in his second season in MLS and his second season as a starter for Montreal. He had previously played 2 seasons for Valor FC in the Canadian Premier League. Can they rattle him early? Can they get to him? Can Hugo Kuipers and Xherdan Shaqiri maybe put a little name recognition fear into this goalkeeper? I doubt it, because if you're a pro, those things don't get to you. But hey, if they can rifle a few shots off early, you never know what goes through a goalkeeper's mind. Additionally, what I would like to see is if Montreal does come out with this very attacking-minded formation where you've got an attacking midfielder in Duke and you've got your dual strikers pushing forward, can the Chicago Fire pass through that center midfield, that center defensive midfield pairing of Piet and Chouanieri or whoever takes that spot? I would really like to see Kuipers go as far as Montreal will let him. To stretch, I want to stretch this Montreal defense. I want Kuipers pushing as far upfield as you can, and I want the Chicago wingers, outside midfielders, whatever you want to call them, however Klopas wants to play them, I want them, to borrow the phrase, right, chalk on the boot wingers, all the way out on the lines. I want to see this Montreal team stretched, and then I want to see the Chicago Fire use their speed and take advantage of it with Kuipers, with Mueller, with Gutierrez, with Haile Selassie. That's what I want to see. Following out here in my notes, I think you need to do that. Push Shaqiri, Herbers, Selassie, Mueller, these guys out wide. And then let's see some of the passing skill of Chicago's midfielders. Acosta, Mueller, supposedly Jimenez, Pineda, hopefully, and then Gutierrez. If we can link that up, I think that would be great. We can kind of run this Montreal midfield ragged, pass through them, and then get some shots off, forcing their defense to have to decide, forcing that back line to have to decide, do we step up or do we continue to fall back and hold our shape? At that point, if those wingers are slashing in, you create a mismatch situation and the Fire can take advantage of it. Now, those are big ifs. We have not seen the wing play develop the way we've wanted it to, Fire fans. And Montreal is playing very well at this point in the season. They're on form. So that's how I think I would coach it. fact, that's how I know I would coach it if I were in charge of this Fire team. I would want to stretch this Montreal team because I think at the end of the day, the Chicago Fire center backs are better than the Montreal attackers and could probably face up on them one-on-one. But is that how Frank Lopez is going to play? I don't know. We will see if he's going to keep a hot Herbers in the starting lineup. I don't see why he'd pull him. I don't see why anyone would pull Herbers at this point. But additionally, are we going to see Chris Mueller get a start? Are we going to see Pineda playing alongside Acosta? Are we going to see Gutierrez have a game like Philly where he was pushing forward, looking to shoot instead of looking to play laterally? And will Shaqiri just stop turning the ball over off the dribble and lobbing balls forward? One final shout out. Got to recognize Montreal's Ilias Iliadis, 22-year-old backup midfielder and fellow countryman, fellow Greek. So shout out to Ilias there. That's my take on the upcoming match. Couple other quick things to talk on. U.S. Open Cup format. Last week I said it was going to be 8 MLS teams, the defending champ Houston, and the next 7 best teams in the Supporter Shield standing from last season. Got to tweak that a little bit. I wasn't exactly correct. It turns out it's the defending champ and the 7 best teams not in CONCACAF Champions Cup. So it's not going to go by Supporter Shield. It's by the teams who are not in CONCACAF Champions Cup. Now that doesn't matter for Houston this year. They're the defending champ. They're going to be in CONCACAF Champions Cup. So that is going to congest the Houston schedule. But I guess the rest of it is supposed to help the congestion. I don't know. Also, we got some clarity on the roster rules here. Timothy Hotza over at Men in Red 97 Media. You can follow him on Twitter at @sing_electric. Gave out some roster rules since CF2 and a number of other MLS teams are playing their second teams, right? So for this tournament, this edition of the U.S. Open Cup, you can have a maximum of 7 first-team players. They must be on 90-day loans or longer. They cannot be designated player or targeted allocation money level players. No TAM or DP players in U.S. Open Cup if you are one of the 11 teams sending your second team. Those players must be averaging less than 15 minutes per game with the first team through this weekend. So I'm assuming that means this upcoming match 4, because I think he just put this tweet out earlier today, the 11th. Or maybe he means 3 games. Anyway, less than 15 minutes, right? And according to Timothy, this would make most regular contributors for the first teams ineligible. So, hey, maybe it's Wyatt Olmsberg's time to shine now, since he hasn't gotten any minutes with the first team. So that's an update on the U.S. Open Cup roster rules there, and kind of gives you a little indication of how CF2 might approach it. And maybe they're actually coordinating with Frank Lopez and the first team and saying, like, hey, let's keep a few of these guys back so we can use them in U.S. Open Cup. Heck, I doubt Koutsias gets in the Open Cup, but man, I think he'd play real well in there if given that opportunity. Now, that's all the main content, but quickly, as I mentioned, we've got a little bit of an update here to the recording space. No green screen, no fuzzy, no odd lighting. So let me know if you like the new look, if you like some of the memorabilia and fire things that are up on the walls. Here, let me go back over here to my left. We've got the Return to Red scarf from the launch party. The latest Chicago Fire white jersey here. Gosh, why can't I even remember the name of that kit? Soccer for All City kit. I forget exactly which one it is. We've got behind me the Water Tower blue kit and the original logo here, the old Valspar kit on the right. Jeez, when was that? Circa 20 something or other. Anyway, my history lesson is fading here. But also to kind of round out the wall, we've got the Rockford FC scarf here, my hometown where I grew up playing soccer, where I fell in love with the sport. So I figured I'd support their team, founded in 2019. So fear the gear, as they say. We also have my Greece World Cup 1994 pennant there. That was a match, Greece versus Bulgaria at Soldier Field, 4-0 Bulgaria. The Greeks were out partying in Greek night all night before the match, and it was very evident in how they played on the field. And anytime their goalie made a save, All he did was punt it into the upper deck of Soldier Field to kill as much time as he possibly could. And then we've got the Chicago Fire flag here that was given out at the home opener, and a few other little tiny things. I don't know if you guys can zoom in and see any of this, but over here we had the Chris Mueller intro poster from last season where he's sitting up on the water tower over at Woodfield Mall. Nice little Photoshop there. We have the Juneteenth Chicago Fire program from 2 seasons ago, I believe. And then over down here, this is my throwback poster here. This is the 2008 Major League Soccer poster with the tagline "Impossible is nothing." And this is a lineup, man. Let me get out of the way here. See, let me zoom this in. Sorry for the terrible camera work here. For those of you who can see this, this is a 2008 MLS poster with David Beckham, Sasha Kljestan at Chivas, Eddie Robinson at Houston, Kenny Cooper of Dallas, Kai Kamara for San Jose, Pablo Mastroeni playing for Colorado, now coaching Salt Lake, Nathan Sturgis of Salt Lake, Michael Harrington of the Kansas City Wizards, Daniel O'Rourke with Columbus, Chad Barrett is representing the Chicago Fire in this one, Michael Parkhurst of the Revolution, Luciano Emilio of DC United, Mo Edu of TFC, and Josie Altidore of Red Bulls. That is this poster, my 2008 Adidas MLS poster that I just kind of had to throw up there for some of the history of the league here. And with that little walk down memory lane and a little 50-cent tour of the new recording space, I will leave you to your evenings, to your days. I want to thank everyone who's tuned in, who's listening and watching. Thank you so much for your support. Please share the show. Let's grow the listenership. Let's continue to rate, review, like, and subscribe. Grow the game through conversation. And as always, let's go Fire.